What's up, YouTube? Pink Reaper here. So what you're seeing right now is not an actual Pokemon battle. It's in fact not even me doing anything right now. This is pre-recorded. This was me doing damage testing in Generation 6. I made this video. I had this long rant. The whole video came out to be almost an hour long. I was talking about Generation 6, the things I liked, the things I didn't like, stuff like that. And as I do, I had random music playing in the background. This happened to be Mega Man music, and then I uploaded it, and Soundholic totally hit my video and got me muted, which is cool. I didn't want to go through the trouble of disputing that, so now you're not seeing me live test anything. This is just me doing damage testing in the background, and I'm going to be talking over it with the sound completely muted, so I can't possibly get hit again. Sorry if the background stuff seems kind of worthless, kind of random, whatever. The damage testing was important to me. I don't really think to run numbers in damage calculators. I think it's faster just to play and see what does and doesn't kill you. Basically, I like seeing how much damage I take just by taking damage, really. This will be a good chance, though. I kind of rambled a bit in the original video. I sort of lost my train of thought a couple times when I got distracted by things like phone calls and laundry and stuff like that. So it should be okay. This one will probably come out a lot shorter than the one before it. So Gen 6. I have been playing a lot of Gen 6 recently. I like Gen 6. I like Gen 6 a lot. Gen 6 is significantly better than Gen 5. There are two metagames currently for Gen 6. There is OU and there is Pokebank OU. I have been playing both. I much prefer OU. The difference between these two things is, excuse me, in OU, or rather in Pokebank, everything that is available in any previous generation is legal. If you could have gotten it in Gen 5, you could have gotten it in Gen 4. If you could have gotten it in Gen 3, it's still legal. In OU, it is as Gen 6 is currently. Gen 6 currently, you cannot trade from older generations, so you can only play with things that are available in Gen 6. Only things that can be bred in Gen 6, only things that can learn moves in Gen 6, only things that can get move tutor moves in Gen 6. That loses out on a lot of stuff. There's no Bounce Gyarados. There's obviously no Wish Bliss, because Wish was an event move for Blissey. There are very few legendaries. The only legendaries are the ones that are available in Gen 6, which are the Gen 6 legendaries themselves, and Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. There's a ton of moves Pokemon just cannot learn in Gen 6 because they're either egg moves, event moves, things like that. For instance, Donphan can't get knockoff, which is sort of a weird thing, I guess. The reason I prefer OU to Pokebank is because Pokebank doesn't have any of the 5th gen legendaries. That's the only reason. I think the 5th gen legendaries are stupidly overpowered. I think they are unquestionably the most broken Pokemon introduced in Gen 5. In Gen 5. Landorus, Thundurus, Tornadus, and then their 3 Therian forms are all absurd. I believe 2 of them already got banned. I think Tornadus got banned, and I think what was the other one? I can't remember. I think Terrakion and Keldeo are insane, although maybe they'll get less so now that, or Keldeo at least will get less so insane without permanent rain. But no, it's still pretty much a stupid Pokemon. Don't get me wrong. That Pokemon is absurd, and rain is still a thing that exists. You can see me doing random moves in the background here, trying to figure out what does damage to what. Other than that, I don't think anything really is broken in Gen 5. I don't think the new abilities introduced in Gen 5 are broken. I don't think the new Pokemon introduced in Gen 5 are broken. But I really dislike the legendaries. They have insane stats to take advantage of. They all basically are built to be like choice Pokemon, really. Well, not all of them, but like Landorus T, obviously it loves Choice Scarf. You've got 145 base attack in an amazing typing with some amazing moves. Obviously, that Pokemon loves Choice Scarf. You've got um, Choice Specs Keldeo with Rain and Hydro Pump and 128 base special attack. You can just, spam it. Who cares? You resist it, it doesn't matter. You're gonna get 2-hit KO'd if you resist it. It doesn't matter. Um, Terrakion with that 128 base attack, close combat, 108 speed, Stone Edge. Oh, it's great. No, it doesn't matter what kind of Pokemon you are. I'm going to KO you. I don't like any of those Pokemon. Then there's obviously normal Landorus that has Sand Force, or no, Sheer Force. And then, Life Orb, Earth Power, all that stuff. It's really stupid. I don't like those Pokemon. And as such, I really like the normal OU metagame. I have been playing significantly more Pokebank, however, because I believe that is where the meta is going to be. I think everyone is going to play Pokebank. Once that is available, it's just going to be the thing that everyone plays. So I am learning, or I'm not learning, but I'm generally staying in Pokebank for when I play Gen 6. I will like to play old OU. I'm going to call it the new 200. For those who don't know, there was a metagame in Gen 3 called 200. It was only things that were legal in Gen 3. It was only things that were available on cart. There was no and it was only Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald. I'm sorry. It did not include Fire Red. It did not include Leaf Green. There was no event Pokemon, nothing. It was only stuff you could get on cart and breed on cart. That was the 200 metagame because there was only 200 Pokemon available in the game at that time. This will be the new 200. I guess I'd call it the 600 since I think there's still like 600 Pokemon available in Gen 6, but whatever. I just really like it, to be completely honest. But getting into the actual metagame, so let's talk about some of the big changes in Gen 6. The biggest is, in my opinion, not the fairy typing, it's the steel buff. Steel Pokemon have generally just been the most powerful, like the best typing in the game. You match Steel up with something else that's really, really good, and then you just win at that point. Steel Psychic, like Metagross here, used to be one of the amazing typings. Steel neutered all Psychic weaknesses, and then Psychic neutered your Fighting type weakness, so now you've only got Ground and Fire. Two weaknesses to two pretty common attacking typings, but to make up for it, you've now got an absurd amount of resistances. Now Steel no longer resists Dark and Ghost, and this kind of makes Dark the best attacking type in the game. Ghost is also up there. Ghost hits pretty much everything neutral, but Dark actually hits more neutral than Ghost does, really. Well, that's not true. It's sort of a give and take thing. Ghost has an immunity. Dark actually has a couple more resistances. They're not common, though. It's a huge buff to certain Pokemon. I only realized recently I can start just throwing out crunches with Tyranitar, and there's not a lot of things that can resist it. It means that Steel is no longer the absolute force when it comes to defensive typing. It's still really, really good. There you see I'm testing out a +1 crunch against Ferrothorn to see what it does. But it's still a really important nerf. Pokemon like Scissor that abused that to be able to come in on a lot of stuff. That Scissor can no longer free switch into Tyranitar. It's going to take a lot of damage if it switches into a crunch. It can no longer free switch into Gengar. It's going to take a ton of damage if it takes a hit from Shadow Ball. It's just a really, really big important nerf because Steel was just the typing for defense. Obviously, then the next big nerf goes to Dragon types because of fairy typing, and again, Dragon was like the standard for attacking. You stick a dragon type on your team and you boost somehow, and then you just start outraging. Once the steel is gone, you've essentially won. I honestly don't feel like that has changed because the current fairy types are all awful. There are some really good steel types, or steel types, fairy types. There are Florgress, which is an amazing special defensive fairy type. It's got not a ton of HP, it's like 80 HP, 73 defense, and then 154 special defense. The important thing is it's a much, much better special wall than what you'd expect because it also doesn't take a ton of damage from physical hits. The most common physical attacking types are fighting, are dragon, honestly, even though it's not super, super common. To start throwing out dragon moves while there's a fairy type out there, but there's a lot of dark now because of the steel nerf. There's a lot of ghost, but ghost is generally a special typing, so you take that really well as well. It gives you some very useful resistances, and it doesn't have a lot of exploitable weaknesses. Fairy is probably the best defensive typing now, as it is only weak to, I think it's poison and steel. Steel is kind of a big one because bullet punch is a thing that exists and it's a very common thing, but it's still not common really outside of that. You end up basically never seeing poison type attacking. Even if poison hits fairy types, no one will use it. It's completely resisted by too many types. There's steel that's immune to it, and steel is still super, super frequently used in this game. It's just, and it doesn't get a lot of good neutral or super effective coverage. It's not very good. People were talking about how Sludge Bomb Gengar was going to be super, super OU. I don't see that happening. I don't see Sludge Bomb being the thing that is used on Gengar. I think Gengar will be super OU, but that's beyond the point. There were some nerfs and buffs to actual attacks in Gen 5. Thunderbolt, Surf, Flamethrower, Psychic, all of the attacks that had 95 base power that you can think of now have 90 base power. They got nerfed 5 base damage. And then Fire Blast, Thunder, Hydro Pump, Blizzard, Leaf Storm, the moves that you commonly think of with the 120 base attack, got dropped down to 110. This is not a huge deal. It is sort of a slight damage nerf, and it's better, honestly. I think it's an opposite of a power creep. I really wish, Yu-Gi-Oh! Would do that and realize, hey, maybe we shouldn't stop making broken stuff, but, whatever. It doesn't necessarily hugely affect the, one-hit KOs you will get. In fact, it doesn't really affect any of the one-hit KOs you'll get. Generally, one-hit KOs in this game come from super effective damage, and that's it. It's either super effective or it's boosted, and if you're boosted or getting super effective hits, you're probably still one-hit KOing. It does, however, super, super affect the resisted hits. This is super important here. You're not doing significantly less damage with, say, Fire Blast on a Gyarados, but you're doing less damage. Sorry, I'm constantly drinking my water here because my throat is kind of destroyed, mostly because I did an hour-long video and now I have to do another one. If you were doing, say, 25% to a Gyarados before, now you're only doing 19% as your max. That doesn't seem like a huge difference right there. But, when you consider the fact that after leftovers, you're now down to just over 12%, and you're probably going to have to switch, that damage is suddenly negligible. You'll do less damage to Tyranitar, even with boosted or specs hits. You'll do stuff like that, and that's kind of important. Other random nerfs and buffs. Meteor Mash is now 90/90 for power accuracy rather than 180. 100/80. I don't feel that that's a bad thing, honestly. I have some people like, oh, Metagross is even worse now because its attack got nerfed. It's like, yeah, but now you can actually hit with it pretty consistently. So that's actually pretty important. When you take into account the chance for a power boost, I think it's actually like 3% better overall than the old Meteor Mash. I can't remember what it was. I had it actually jotted down somewhere, but it's something like that. Um, Knockoff randomly got buffed, which I'll be talking about that a bit more in depth later. But now Knockoff does 65 base damage, and it doubles in power if you actually knock an item off. I say knock an item off rather than if your enemy is holding an item, because you can't knock off Mega Stones. So if you hit a Mega Evolved Pokemon with it, it'll still just be, or a Pokemon that's holding a Mega Stone with it, it'll still only do 70 or 65 base damage. There's some other random stuff. There's some some buffs to random Pokemon and their base stats. None of them really stand out. Azumarill got plus 10 base defense. Raichu got plus 10 base speed. None of this is super important. Alakazam did get plus 10 base special defense, and its special defense was already okay. Like, it could take a neutral special hit pretty well. Now it can take it a little bit better. The only one that really stood out to me was Nidoking and Nidoqueen getting plus 10 more base defense or attack. People have mostly been like, oh, that doesn't matter because Sheer Force just runs special attacks anyways. Well, yeah, it kind of matters, because now it's viable to run physical attacks, mixed sets, physical sets. Those things can exist and can do exactly as well as special sets against a different set of Pokemon. What that means is that Pokemon now has a layer of unpredictability to it. That Pokemon is now better. People might not believe this, but it's true. It might not actually happen because there's too many people who just sort of stick to one single set. I had this argument with someone about Metagross the other day. Someone's like, Metagross has gotten worse every generation. Assault Vest does not make Metagross any better. For those who don't know, Assault Vest is an item that increases special defense by 50%, but you can't use, you can only use attacking moves. You cannot use anything that does not attack. No Stealth Rocks, no screens, no setup moves like Agility, Dragon Dance, no anything other than straight up attacking. The problem is people seem to forget Metagross doesn't just run Stealth Rocks, Bullet Punch, Meteor Mash, Explosion, or if you're running 4 attacks, Earthquake, Meteor Mash, Bullet Punch, Explosion. There are so many good sets you can run with Metagross. There's sets I'm now considering switching to because I need to switch how my team plays for Gen 6. Metagross is one of the absolute best dual screeners in the entire game. Metagross is very capable of setting up with agility and ripping holes into Pokemon. Yes, it is hard-walled by Rotom Wash, which is a bummer because a lot of people run it. But there's a lot of Pokemon that are hard-walled by certain Pokemon. It's just sort of how it works. Most physical attacking Pokemon will never get past a Rotom, a Skarmory. It's just a fact. The only way to do it is to be like Gyarados with Taunt and Dragon Dance and just set up on it as hard as you can so that you can 2-hit KO it, or else it's not going to happen. Some Pokemon get hard-walled. The important thing is that if you have a lot of different things you can do, your Pokemon is now significantly less predictable. That'll get into the prediction video whenever I finally make that. Assault Vest is a huge buff to some Pokemon. It makes a lot of Pokemon a lot more terrifying. Mixtar is now very dangerous with that super huge special defense stat. It can survive pretty much every special attack boosted or unboosted by Choice Scarf. There's not a lot that can do it unless it's like a Focus Blast. And if you're running a lot of special defense, no, not even a Focus Blast. Sorry. So that was a huge buff to a lot of Pokemon. There's some really interesting new items. Weakness Policy is one. I will more than likely be running Weakness Policy on my Tyranitar and setting up right in the face of Water Pokemon and just tearing up the game. +3, +1 is pretty much all you need. You will now one-hit KO everything. But it's also really good on a lot of other Pokemon that people might not be considering, or people are considering. Aegislash is one. Aegislash can make really good use of that, actually. Because there's a lot of things that hit Aegislash super effectively, but don't one-hit KO it. The other Pokemon that really stands out to me, what was it? God, what's its name? Dragonite, I'm sorry. Weakness Policy, Dragonance, Dragonite. Or even Agility, Agilonite, and just go +2, +2. With Multiscale, there's very few things that one-hit KO you, even with an Ice attack. I'm actually very scared of Weakness Policy Dragonite to the point where if I don't have Rocks up, if it comes in at 100%, I will always 100% hit it with something it's not super effective with right away, and then I will just one-hit KO it after that. I refuse to get hit. I refuse to let it go to +2, +2, because at that point there's not a lot I can do. But that's a really interesting item. There's not too much else in terms of items. I haven't really gotten into too many of the new items. I don't know specifically what all of them do or what all the new items are, but those are the ones that stand out to me. Gen 5 well, yeah, let's talk about Gen 5. Gen 5 introduced a bunch of really broken Pokemon in terms of all of the legendaries. Gen 6 has not. Gen 6 only introduced 3 legendary Pokemon. That was Yveltal, Xerneas, and Zygarde. Zygarde is not very good. Well, it's not that it's not very good, it's just not that great. It doesn't really do anything better than the dragons that already exist. It's sort of like a mixture between Dragonite and Garchomp. It's much weaker than either of those two Pokemon, but it sets up well. It has some good it has Dragon Dance. It has Extreme Speed. It can do some good stuff. It can do work. It's not a bad Pokemon. It'll probably be OU. It's just not like super dangerous, because it's still somewhat slow. It's still got an abusable typing with that 4x weakness, but, you know, it is what it is. Zygarde and Yveltal are pretty broken. Yveltal might actually, not Yveltal, Zygarde might actually be, like, one of the absolute most broken Pokemon ever introduced. It's got insane stats, typing, it's just ridiculous. There are a lot of Pokemon in Gen 6 that are really interesting that I will expect to see in OU. Gourgeist and Trevenant both will 100% make OU. Their typing in combination with access to Will-O-Wisp is really strong. It might not seem that way. They've got some big weaknesses in there: Ice, Fire, Dark, Ghost. But they've got some really useful resistances, not the least of which is the Rock resistance. Rock resistance, fighting immunity, and they're very bulky. Don't get me wrong; they're actually very bulky Pokemon that should not be underestimated. They're also, like, bar none, the best spin blockers in the game, as I think I mentioned in the other video. The absolute best Pokemon unquestionably added into Gen 6, and I mean, like, this will be the staple OU that you see on 90% of your teams is Aegislash. Aegislash is an absurd Pokemon. For those who don't know, Aegislash's base stats, Aegislash has 2 forms, okay? Aegislash has a shield form and a sword, or a shield stance and a sword stance. When it's in shield stance, it has base 60 HP, 50 attack, 150 defense, 50 special attack, 150 special defense, and 60 speed. That's kind of ridiculous defenses right there, especially on Ghost Dark, which is an absurd typing. 3 immunities. It's actually got a lot more weaknesses now that Steel doesn't resist Dark and Ghost, but you've got a ton of resistances to back it up. And you've got just a huge amount of defense. But when you use any attacking move, any move that attacks your opponent, you switch to Sword Stance, which switches your defense and offense stats. So now you're on 150 attack and special attack with 50 defense and special defense. You're absurdly frail at that point, but you've got an absurd amount of power. The reason this Pokemon is so dangerous is because of how much a guessing game fighting against it is. To switch back into defense form, it uses the move King Shield. King Shield is a protect move. It has plus for priority, so nothing out prioritizes it, except for switching. It's got it protects. You don't take any damage when you use protect. Although it's worth noting that you're only protected from attacks. You're not protected from Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, anything like that. Those still go through. And if anything makes contact when you use that move, they go -1 in attack. The big problem is that it's really, really difficult to one-hit KO it when it's in defense form. But it's really easy for it to KO you when it's not. It has access to Swords Dance and Priority Shadow Sneak, which is an obscene combination. If it can get to +4, you've lost. Very few things in this game can take a +4 Shadow Sneak, and if they can, it can go straight into defense mode while you attack, and then it can use a slower move so that it stays in defense form until after you attack. It's a ridiculous Pokemon. It will be staple OU. There's a lot of other really good things they introduced. Goodra, I really like. It's adorable. It's a snail dragon. But it's also really, really, really good. It's got 150 special defense. It's got okay attacking stats. It's like 100 or 110 special attack. It's got access to a bunch of special attacks that it can really make good use of. That Pokemon will definitely be OU. It's very, very, very bulky. It's not like any other dragon type that's really been introduced. It does not focus on attacking the way that other dragons do. It focuses on defense, and it uses it really well. It's got some good abilities in Hydration, which allows it to do Hydration Rest if it wants, or Gooey, which lowers speed on anything that makes contact. Both are really, really good abilities. Hydration's probably the lower of the two, just because no permanent rain. But it's definitely very good. I expect to see that Pokemon a lot in OU. What else got introduced that's just really, really strong? Protean Frogadier. That Pokemon it's so weird. If it wasn't for Protean, that Pokemon would be awful. But it has access to a bunch of really, really, really good moves, both support and offensive. It's probably the best offensive spiker in the game. It's probably the only offensive spiker in the game. There's not a lot of other Pokemon that can set up spikes while being very, very offensive, except maybe Roserade. The big thing is, obviously, Protean causes it to switch its typing to whatever type of attack it's about to use, so it gets stab on everything. That is insane. It doesn't have a lot of special attack. It's like 103 or 107, but when you're adding 50% to everything you attack with, it's just suddenly really good. It also gets access to Taunt. It also gets access to Spikes. It can do support or straight attacking very, very well. The one saving grace is that it's very hard for it to abuse resistances, because it's very hard for it to know what it's going to get hit with. and sometimes the things it resists, the attacking type it resists with, isn't particularly useful against what's in against it. And it also has very, very, very bad defenses. It's very frail. You can usually 2-hit KO it with resisted hits anyways. But it's definitely a heavily OU Pokemon. It's very strong, don't get me wrong. And it's very good at setting up spikes, so I'd expect to see that Pokemon a lot in OU. Avalugg, I never thought I would say this, but Avalugg is probably the most ridiculously defensive Pokemon that's been introduced in a long time, and it's an ice type. It's still very, very good, though. It's mono ice, but it's got like 100 base HP and 184 base defense. It's insanely difficult to one-hit KO. And it has access to recover and rapid spin. Those are very huge things for that Pokemon. That means Trevenant and Gourgeist can't wall it as well. I forgot that was a rapid spinner when I mentioned that. Because of that, it actually makes an insane physical wall. However, it's worth noting that's only really against Pokemon that can't set up. DD-Tar can still totally destroy it. Just because +1 Stone Edge pretty much one-hit KOs it, I believe. Bulk up fighting types will definitely destroy it. But it's still really, really dangerous. It should not be underestimated. That said, that one probably won't be OU, but I wanted to mention it because I thought it was funny. Oh, excuse me. Noivern, one of the other new dragon types introduced, is probably going to end up OU. In theory, it's not that great. It's got a really, really, really high speed stat and nothing else that really stands out. However, its typing is really good. It has a monstrous move pool, access to just a ton of really, really good special attacks, and including Boom Burst, which is a new 140 base power normal special move, with no drawbacks at all. It's got 100 accuracy. Noivern with either a Life Orb or a Choice Specs is actually very, very strong. Even with the lack of base stats backing it up, its typing is still really good. It's still very, very, very strong. That will probably be a very OU Pokemon. And I actually think Goodra plus... Noivern have sort of obsoleted Salamence. Salamence is now OU again. For those who don't know, it was Uber. It won't remain Uber, and it will definitely still be good in OU. But the problem is, a lot of the stuff that it does, the other Dragon Pokemon do better. I don't think it's the best Dragon Dancer anymore. That definitely goes to Multi-Scale Dragonite. It's just better at abusing Dragon Dance because it can survive longer. It can't really abuse... it can't be really used defensively because Intimidate... Even with Intimidate, it just doesn't have the kind of defenses that the newer Dragon Pokemon introduced have had. It's not as good of a special attacker as either Goodra or Noivern. Noivern is faster and has much better moves and much better move pool. Goodra is significantly bulkier, even with Intimidate taken into account. Has significantly less weaknesses and has a much better move pool. It doesn't make the best Scarfer, even with Moxie, because at +1 speed, it's still outsped by... unfortunately for it, by Scarf Garchomp. Garchomp having that slightly higher speed just outright beats it. And it doesn't really have that great of a physical move pool to take advantage of with all of those fairies running around. It doesn't have a way around Togekiss, probably the best fairy type right now. Um, it only has access to, like, I think Iron Head as a way to deal with it, and that's really it. Um, Earthquake, Outrage, all of its special attacks, none of that will do anything, obviously, to Togekiss, and that's just kind of where it's at. As getting into fairy types, Togekiss as well. Um, the new fairy types are all just awful. There's not a lot of good fairy types. Um, I don't know if I already talked about this. Floorgrass probably be OU. Um, Ridiculous defensive typing in Mono Fairy. That's actually a really great typing. 154 base special defense. Not terribly high physical defenses, but it doesn't matter because it resists fighting, which is just sort of great. Um, no weakness to Stealth Rocks or anything like that. It can Wish Pass. It's got usable special attack. I think it can Calm Mind, actually, which is dangerous. That will be one of the OU fairies. Togekiss will absolutely be in OU fairies. It is the unquestionable best fairy type in the game. It's got absurd stats, a new absurd typing. The removal of normal typing made it so much better. It now resists dark. It's neutral to, it resists fighting. Quad resists fighting, I think. It's immune to ground. It resists grass. It's just a really, really strong Pokemon, and it's immune to dragons, obviously. It got Play Rough, which is one of the best new fairy type attacks. It's just super, super, super good. It's way bulky, and like I cannot understate or overstate this. Togekiss is super, super bulky, and obviously it still has access to Paraflinching, Serene Grace, and all that bull. It's a really, really great Pokemon. Definitely a staple for OU, I feel. I don't know if a lot of people will use it just because a lot of people don't like playing bulky Pokemon like that, but it'll definitely be OU, unquestionably. The other fairy types that might be OU are Gardevoir and Azumarill. Azumarill does not belong in OU, but it'll probably see enough usage just because it's a fairy type, and OMG, it can belly drum Aqua Jet, except for it can't because it doesn't have a way to set that up ever. If you belly drum with Azumarill, you lose. Like, you will probably lose that turn. There goes 50% of your health, and then you die. Gardevoir might make OU just because, again, it's a fairy type. People are kind of hard up on the fairy types, even though they're not that good. Its typing gives it a quad weakness to Bug, which is huge. But it's still pretty strong. It's still pretty fast. People will try and use it for a while. It'll probably be OU for a while, but it'll probably fall out. Moving on from there, I want to talk about the Mega Pokemon. The Mega Pokemon are my one, like... I can't even really say it makes me dislike anything in Gen 6, because it's just sort of an addition of more Pokemon that are... that obviously some are really great, some aren't. This happens, there's always... Every generation they introduce some Pokemon. Some Pokemon are great, some Pokemon aren't. The Mega Pokemon have the highest amount of Pokemon that I feel just absolutely need to be banned from this generation, but even then it's not a lot. Mega Gengar and Mega Blaziken are 100% unquestionably banned. They need to be banned, like, right away. Shadow Tag is stupid on a Pokemon with 130 speed and 150 special attack. You're insane if you think that doesn't belong. That belongs in OU. Blaziken, normal Blaziken needs to be banned. It's unreasonably powerful, and Mega Blaziken is not any better. I honestly don't even think I honestly feel like Mega Blaziken doesn't even belong in Uber, and for that matter, kind of Mega Gengar. it's insane. Past that, we enter into what I feel like are the somewhat bannable Pokemon. Well, that's not true. Okay, Mega Tyranitar also probably needs to be banned. Mega T-Tar does have a quad weakness to fighting. The thing is, if you're not abusing that quad weakness to fighting, you're not going to kill Tyranitar and Mega Tyranitar in one hit. It's not going to happen. You might have seen me doing a test earlier. I was testing Excadrill's Adamant Life Orb Earthquake against Tyranitar. That does one hit KO it. The thing is, not many people run Life Orb Excadrill. In fact, pretty much no one runs it. Everyone runs Balloon. Non-Life Orbed Excadrill EQ does not one hit KO Mega Tyranitar. I took one of those hits the other day. I survived with 31%. Excadrill has the strongest Earthquake in OU at 100. Well, that's not true. Landorus T does. Excadrill has the second strongest. But what that means is stuff like Garchomp does not one hit KO you. Mamoswine does not one hit KO you. Anything weaker than that using Earthquake is not going to one hit KO you. Things using like stuff like Meteor Mash from Metagross will not one hit KO you. Other things that are really important that don't one hit KO you, Bullet Punch does not one hit KO you with a Choice Band. It only does around 70% max. Adamant Aqua Jet from a Azumarill only does like 50%. These are priority attacks that you would normally depend on to get past a DD-Tar. That doesn't work anymore. You have to be using like Technician Mach Punch, or you have to be using Choice Scarf fighting moves. That's how you get past DD-Tar. Otherwise, you pretty much fold. There are some really super bulky Pokemon that can take a hit from DD-Tar and phase it out at the very least. For instance, Skarmory does relatively well. It would actually, I think it actually gets 2-hit KO'd by +1 Megatar, but it can phase it out before it happens. Depending on the spread, I don't think you can 2-hit KO. Excuse me. I don't think you can 2-hit KO Hippowdon, but that's a very uncommon Pokemon. You can definitely 1-hit KO Ferrothorn if you're running a fire move like I am. Fire Punch 100% 1-hit KOs Ferrothorn at +1. It's an absurd Pokemon, and if you're running a Megatar and you're not running Mega DD-Tar, you need to switch it out. The only saving grace is that Stone Edge is not 100% accurate, which, oh my god, Stone Miss is the worst move in the game. And with Mega Stone, you can't run a Lumberry, which means you can't set up on certain things that you would otherwise be able to set up on. Like I used to set up on Rotom Wash frequently, and then I'd 1-hit KO it at +1 after it Will-O-Wisp me. It doesn't work anymore. But you can still set up on a lot of things. You can still scare out a lot of things and set up on them. Then we get into the not sure if bannable. Mega Lucario in theory should be broken. It seems like it would be. Adaptability 35 attack, 145. It's got a ton of attack, something like that, and 115 base speed. I think it's actually 140 base attack. The thing is, I haven't run into a Mega Lucario that runs Swords Dance, or if I have, I haven't given them a chance to use it. Swords Dance, Close Combat, Extreme Speed, and then like Crunch. In theory, you should just beat everything at that point. And in fact, I'd even maybe take off Extreme Speed and put on like Bullet Punch, so you could at least hit Mega Gengar if you get stuck against it. But in practice, it just hasn't happened. It may very well in the future. It may be like people realize, oh my god, this Pokemon is insane. But for the time being, it's not happening. The other one, and this is the one that just absolutely struck me out of nowhere, I did not expect this to happen, was Mega Kangaskhan. Mega Kangaskhan, for those who don't know, its ability is Parental Bond. What it means is whenever it attacks with an attacking move, the child Kangaskhan also attacks. The child's attack, the second attack, has 50% power. The first attack. In essence, what this means is you get 50% extra damage on any given attack. And there's a lot of ways this is super, super abusable. Power Up Punch, a new move that was introduced in Gen 6, only has like 40 base power, but it's 100% accurate, and every time it hits, so obviously if you use it against a ghost Pokemon, every time it hits, you go +1 in attack. What that means is if you use it with Parental Bond, you not only do you go +2, but your second hit happens when you're at +1, because Kangaskhan attacks, you're at +1, baby Kangaskhan attacks, while you're at +1, you become +2. You do a ton of damage at that point. It's like you're hitting with like close combat or more at that point. You have access to Sucker Punch, which is a double priority move at that point. You hit with Sucker Punch and then you hit with Sucker Punch again. It just does an absolute ton of damage, and with 100, 100, 100 defenses, it's pretty bulky, and normal typing isn't great defensively, but you've only got one weakness, and that's to fighting. So if you're attacking this with a non-fighting move, you're probably not going to one-hit KO it. Lord knows my Garchomp's Outrage failed to do it. The only real saving grace is that there's not a good way for it to deal with like sub-disable Gengar, because its main attacking types, ground, fighting, and normal, and then obviously priority dark that only works if you're being attacked, can't hit that Pokemon. But with that said, you're still pretty much screwed if you're not running sub-disable Gengar. You lose to basically everything. Or I mean, you win against basically everything with Mega Kangaskhan. Those are the only ones I could ever see possibly getting banned. Getting into the OU ones, I was talking about Scizor and Knockoff earlier. I am running Mega Scizor with Swords Dance, Knockoff, Bullet Punch, and Roost. That seems really weird, but it makes more sense in action. Mega Scizor is very hard to one-hit KO without a fire move, so it can set up extremely well. You've got a bunch more defense now in your Mega form. You've got 150 base attack, which puts you at just under 800, I believe, after a Swords Dance. At which point, you can pretty much 2-hit KO everything with Bullet Punch. If you get to +4, you can 2-hit KO everything with Bullet Punch and 1-hit KO most things. But Knockoff actually received a huge buff in this generation, with so few things resisting it, and doubling in power to 130 when used against an opponent with an item, and it still knocks off their item. That's insane. Like, to give you an idea, it did, like, my +2 Knockoff did something like 72% to a Ferrothorn earlier today. That's ridiculous. Why is that a thing? Obviously it's not a perfect Pokemon, but it's very good. That will probably be my Mega Pokemon if Mega Tar gets banned. And it might even stay my Mega Pokemon if it doesn't, just because I think it's just easier to use than Mega DD-Tar, even though Mega DD-Tar is probably better. That'll definitely be... That I definitely feel will be an OU Pokemon. It's just... The thing about Mega Pokemon is, in order for them to be OU, they have to be better than their non-Mega counterparts. Scizor is definitely a good Pokemon, but I feel like Mega Scizor is just better. Mega Charizard, both forms will probably be OU. They're definitely better than normal Charizard. Um, Mega Charizard X is the Dragon Fire type with Tough Claws. It is probably the second best Dragon Dancer in OU currently, right behind Mega T-Tar. It's extremely powerful. It has an extremely great type, and it has an extremely good stabs. It's a very, very, very good Pokemon. Um, Mega Charizard Y comes in with Sun and just obliterates you in one attack. Sunny Fire Blast, Sunny Solar Beam, it's just ridiculously good. The one saving grace is that it's still quad weak to rocks, and it's only got 100 speed. I've actually been considering trying out that Pokemon and just putting Dragon Dance on it without any physical moves, just so I get to +1 speed. Because +1 at base 100 outspeeds basically the meta. It even outspeeds a lot of Scarfers. A lot of Scarfers like run around that area. But yeah, that Pokemon is... Whew, those Pokemon are very strong. I expect them to be OU. This video is winding down. In fact, I actually have to pause it now. This video is now longer than the first video I made. The other megas that I see being OU, there's really not a lot, and I've run into every single one of them. I expect Mega Mawile and Mega Medicham to be OU just because they're too strong for any other metagame. Mega Medicham isn't as good as I thought it would be, even with the Fairy Steel typing. It's still pretty much completely destroyed by bulky Pokemon with Will-O-Wisp. That's Trevenant, that's Gourgeist, that's Rotom, Wash. They all outspeed it and can just Will-O-Wisp it. Well, it can't do anything back because it can't use Sucker Punch. Medicham's kind of in the same boat, except for it's faster. But unlike what was the Pokemon we were just talking about? Mawile, it can't set up. So it's more hurt by stuff like Intimidate Gyarados or Multiscale Dragonite, things like that. It's manageable. I have run into every Mega Pokemon now, having played for a while. Mega Manectric doesn't... Oh! I haven't run into a Mega Ampharos even once. I lied. I might use that Pokemon just to see how it plays. Probably not very well. Mega Manectric didn't matter. It died pretty quick. 130 special attack and speed isn't honestly that great. When you consider there's Pokemon that are like not Mega Pokemon that have stats that are as good or better than that. Like, you're just slightly faster than normal Alakazam and you're significantly weaker. Or not significantly, but you're weaker. Mega Gardevoir, still one hit KO'd by Bullet Punch, so I don't care about it. It's still pretty good, but again, it's not that great. Mega Gyarados, worse than normal Gyarados. Don't ever use it. Mega Garchomp, same boat. Slower than Garchomp, not worth it. It loses to normal Garchomp. Mega Houndoom, I gotta play with that one a little more. It might actually be very good because its attacking types are now really, really good, and it's very strong. And solar power is not to be underestimated. The other Mega starters, Venusaur and Blastoise. Mega Venusaur is not better than normal Venusaur just because it doesn't get chlorophyll. Mega Blastoise is better than normal Blastoise. It's just not worth using. Why would you want to use a Mega type Pokemon as a Rapid Spinner? There's better Pokemon than Rapid Spin. Mega Alakazam, I don't know if it's better than normal Alakazam because it doesn't have Magic Guard, but it does have the ability to switch in with Magic Guard as normal Alakazam, which is noteworthy. That said, it's actually... The one thing it really has over Alakazam is its insane speed stat, which is 150. Otherwise, normal Alakazam is just better because you can run Magic Guard, Life Orb, and it's just more powerful overall. Mega Heracross and Mega Pinsir are both bad. Don't even bother with either of them. Their Mega Heracross is not, or rather, I should say, Heracross is not legitimately threatening without Choice Scarf because it's not very fast, and it is pretty bulky, but it's still pretty manageable. Mega Pinsir is actually really strong, but its typing doesn't lend well to resistances, and it's still not that fast. So it does have that quad fighting resistance, though. I guess that's a thing, but again, it's just not a good. It's not a good use of your Mega slot, to be completely honest. Mega Aggron. I ran into Mega Aggron earlier, but it wasn't an attacking set. It was like a support set. So I just basically ruined it, surprisingly, with Gyarados because it wasn't running a good rock move. It was running like T-Wave, Earthquake, Stealth Rocks, and something else, and I was just taunting it. Lack of rock typing is both a hindrance and a blessing. It really wants Rock Stone Head Smash with Stab. It doesn't have it, so it kind of feels worse. But it's an insane defensive Pokemon. If you really want to use a super strong defensive wall, like if you're worried about something, there you go. It's got Filter to decrease the damage of super effective moves. It's got 230 base defense. It's not bad, but it's just not a good use of Mega Evolution in my opinion. Who else Mega evolves that even matters? I can't really think of anyone else. I know there's more. I'm just kind of forgetting them because they don't really matter. And then, like Mega Mewtwo, obviously, I don't have to talk about. It's not OU. It's never going to be OU. Mega Absol actually. Mega Absol gets Magic Bounce, which is pretty good. It gets, and it can use it if you want to lead with it because Mega Evolving has +5 priority, so it's slower only than switching because switching is +6 priority. Magic Bounce is very good. It means you can't be taunted, you can't be spored, you can't be Will-O-Wisped, you can't be Thunder Waved, and on a Pokemon with like now it has like usable speed, but it also has like 135 attack or something like that. It might even be higher, and it's got Swords Dance and it's got Sucker Punch. It's a very good. It can be a very good Pokemon. I expect it to be a very good Pokemon. I would not be surprised to see people use that as their Mega. I want to test it out a bit, but it's again, it's not something that should be underestimated. Is there anything I am forgetting? Not really sure. I mean, I obviously already forgot some stuff. Like I said, I actually haven't run into a Mega Ampharos, which is kind of surprising. Well, not really, I guess. Ampharos was never that great. I want to use it. I like Ampharos. But that's kind of my rundown of everything 5th Gen. I will eventually make another video that hopefully won't be an hour long to talk about other stuff, where the metagame is heading, stuff like that. But this is my like big overview of Gen 6, what I think about it, what I think about the Pokemon, stuff like that. I'll talk about the legitimate threats and things like that. But until then, thanks for watching, guys. This has been Pink Reaper signing out.